Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Hunter here from The Real Pineapple. So, I want to go ahead and provide a little context and give a little intro here. So, I was lucky enough to get a screener for this documentary that came out this year, or will come out on PBS in a couple months. It's also playing in theaters now, called Let the Little Light Shine. And it's directed by Kevin Shaw, and he has a pretty amazing career so far. He worked on America to Me, The Street Stops Here, City So Real. He did work for ESPN for some of their 30 for 30 stuff. Guy's just incredible talent, and I was lucky enough to get to spend some time to go and speak to him about his career, about this documentary, what it means to him, and I promise I was trying to keep him for only like 15 or 20 minutes, but before I knew it, it had gone ahead and just naturally evolved into a hour long conversation. And I was thinking about cutting it in two, but after listening to it back in full, I went, you know what? This is a very streamlined conversation, and I hope that everyone will just appreciate it in full for what it is. So please check out Kevin Shaw on social media. Check out Let the Little Light Shine. We talk about where you can find the socials in the interview. So please support this documentary. It's my favorite documentary of the year so far. I absolutely adore this documentary. But I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it with Kevin. So sit back, relax, and let's check out our interview with Kevin Shaw. Three, two, one.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, days, and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you're all having a great night, weekend, day, whenever you're checking this out. I've got an interview here for what is one of my favorite documentaries of the year so far, and I'm so excited that he was able to make the time to speak with me tonight. He's a producer, cinematographer, director. He is currently the director of the 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Let the Little Light Shine. I've got Kevin Shaw here. Kevin, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm great. Thanks, Hunter. Thanks for having me tonight.
Seriously, man, thank you so much for making the time. So, I was going through your bio because I like to do a little bit of research, but I do like to keep these more free form and just kind of feel the vibe. So, first off, just tell me about you, man. Like, where are you from? Like, how'd you get in the film? Like,
Sure. So I'm a Chicago native. I was born and raised on the South Side here in Chicago, and basically kind of got into film through my late father. My late father worked at the local television station here in Chicago, WFLD. He was an engineer there for over 40 years. And, like any budding little son who wanted to be like their dad, I wanted to get into TV as well. But he had always told me that if I wanted to do that, I wanted to get into I'm a big sports fan. And so one thing I wanted to do was had an interest in being a play-by-play sports broadcaster, that kind of
nice.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he had told me that, hey, if you want to do that kind of stuff, you should learn how to write. You really need to know how to write and be able to tell a story. And so I took that to heart and really pursued journalism. And one thing led to another through school. Went to Michigan State, graduated in a journalism degree. And my first job out of school was at ESPN. And so that was my real introduction into television. And for me, obviously being a sports fan, like I mentioned, it was a dream job in a sense. I was able to do two of my loves, follow sports, and then also tell stories and learn how to tell stories. And from that whole experience, I was really able to build my career from that experience at ESPN, from everything that I learned there to all the people that I met there. A lot of the people that I met at that institution became folks that I could lean on as I began my freelance business, getting out into doing freelance work as a director, as a cinematographer. A lot of the people that I came up with became executives at a number of big networks around the nation, and so they would hire me to do jobs and stuff. So one thing led to another. I was able to do my first documentary, The Street Stops Here, based off of a connection from ESPN, an old friend, Krista Saponara, who ended up being the producer of that movie, and we had worked together at ESPN. And my third love would be movies, and so now
Okay.
I'm in that realm of not only doing sports but also doing movies and doing writing and telling stories and all that. And obviously, probably for me, and I think for a lot of people, one of the best documentaries and one that has inspired a lot of filmmakers over time has been Hoop Dreams.
Absolutely.
Right? What a marriage of sports, but certainly not really a sports story, right? It's that does so much more in telling about just the life of those two men and Chicago and of America. And so that melding there really got me intrigued and trying to push that for myself. And could I be able to work on that kind of level? And when I moved back to the Chicago area about, I don't know, a little more than 10 years ago, I cold called Steve James. I emailed him, actually. He was making the Interrupters movie at that time.
Okay.
And I asked him if I could work on that, if he needed anybody to work on that film. And at the time, he was done filming, but he kept me in his pocketbook, I guess, and I think we all have kind of heard that thing before, right?
Absolutely. I'll get back to you. Yeah.
I'll get back to you. I got your resume on file,
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, okay. It was like that. But wouldn't you know, like probably 3 or 4 years later, Steve reached out to me. I had made a movie called Goose for ESPN, which was a film about Reese Goose Tatum, the first Harlem Globetrotter.
Which I saw, and it's funny. I didn't see anything on that on your in my research, but I dug that.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Yeah. It kind of got buried, man, because ESPN ended up playing it like on the same night of the Oscars, which kind of rubbed me like crazy. Like,
So real quick, how frustrating are kind of the work, not the workarounds, but like the behind the scenes stuff on like that? Because I know going to a documentary, you're not just making a documentary, you're putting all this research in, making sure that it's right and that no one can give you like a gotcha moment, like actually it's this. So you're putting so much of your time into it, and then you get the whole, well, we're going to show it, but it's the same night as the Oscars. So are you just kind of like, does that stuff like discourage you? Does it drive you? Like,
it doesn't discourage me. It drives me more than anything. I don't sit there and it's like I have really taken to this adage of one door closes, another one opens, right? Has happened throughout my life. It's been happening currently with our film and with Let the Little Light Shine and everything. One opportunity closes, but then another one opens that you're not expecting. And so, yeah, man, I had teamed with the same group that did The Street Stops Here on Goose, and we felt really good about that. We had Anthony Mackie, pre-Captain America time, right?
Yeah,
yes, the Falcon time as the narrator for that film. So that was like such a get, and to be able to work with them for that time frame was awesome. And we poured our heart and soul into a story that a lot of people don't know about. When you look at Meadowlark Lemon, Meadowlark Lemon wouldn't be anything without Reese Goose Tatum. He's the guy that started all that back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So to not be able to share that with as wide an audience as you would have liked, it was disappointing. But I do know that the people that did watch it on that evening, because that was kind of social media was starting to become a big thing. You're able to follow trends and follow people. And we got a lot of great response on social media at that point. And then, hey, I hear about people like you that have actually seen the movie. So I'm like, okay, that gives me some love there too.
Yeah, I'm a big Meadowlark fan. So I was like, I remember seeing the Harlem Globetrotters when I was like 10. And so it was like one of those things that always, stood out. So since you're from Chicago and you're a sports guy, that makes me incredibly happy because I can talk sports, so I can talk Chicago with you a little bit. So,
sure.
Getting to the documentary. Actually, before I get there, talk to me about Shaq and Dale a little bit, because I did because I have not seen that one yet. But after just doing a little reading up on it a little bit, I was like, I'm gonna put this on the top of the list here so I can watch that soon. But yeah, what can you tell me about that though?
Yes, you can probably watch it on ESPN Plus if you have that. I'm sure that's in the
I do,
30,
yeah.
yep, in the 30 for 30 archive. So I produced that movie with Hannah Storm, who was the director. Hannah Storm's a reporter and television anchor for ESPN now, but she's been in the business for many, many decades. Well respected reporter and journalist and filmmaker. And so we tag teamed on this project to tell the story of it's really like Shaq's origin story, and this relationship and bond that he ended up building with who I would probably consider, and he would probably consider his second father, Dale Brown, who was the former head coach over at LSU. And Dale Brown is a legendary figure there in that institution and in the state. And the relationship that he built with Shaq was really one of a kind. They really, really leaned on one another. And to be able to tell this story of a young Shaquille O'Neal who was still kind of figuring out his body, who was like he was massively talented, but still trying to fit into those size 20 shoes and leave an imprint on everybody, and needed the guidance of Dale Brown to help him reach his potential, and vice versa too. Like Shaq helped Dale become a better coach, a better human being. And both of those guys really, really got a lot of great gratitude and experience from that relationship. So the movie really just pours into that. It's from both their point of views. They're the only two people who are interviewed in the film. So that was like something that we thought would be a unique little trait, to just have them to be the two main voices. And then one of the other through lines of that movie is that we went back to LSU with both of them, and they kind of took us around a tour of some specific spots on campus, that really
cool.
meant a lot to both of them during that time. So I think it's a great film for people who love Shaq, great little basketball movie as well. And just another great look at two individuals who you probably wouldn't think would have as strong of a bond that they do, and to really recognize that and celebrate it.
Okay, well that's going on top of the list because I definitely have ESPN Plus, and I've been slowly kind of working my way through the 30 for 30 films that I missed. So, all right, so let's get to the main event here. So, I actually watched this yesterday. Let the little light shine, and full disclosure, this made me very angry at points. I was sitting there like son of a, like I was getting so mad at certain points of the film. I guess the first question I have in regards to this is that you have to be objective, like as the director, you have to be able to show all sides. And I thought that one of the trappings that a lot of documentaries fall into is that it's all about how, oh man, look how the educational system is, screwing over these people of color. And yet what you do, not only you do show that, but at the same time, you're showing that it's really not that they're screwing over just the people of color, they're screwing over the community. And you're really pushing the concept of community and what a school can mean as far as community. And that's something I don't think we get enough of in general when kids sign up for school, let alone in documentaries. So I was incredibly impressed with the way you were able to portray that in a film under 90 minutes. You cram a extreme amount of information into this, and yet it's still easy to follow. So I got to give you a shout out on that, just from jump. When you took this on, obviously this is Chicago school. You're from Chicago. This is personal to you. How did your own education, as far as you growing up, had that kind of factor into how you wanted to approach this film?
Yeah, my education was totally different from what kids at NTA experienced. Like I didn't go to public school. Like my parents put me into private schools growing up in Chicago. So I didn't have that experience, that public school experience to lean on. And that wasn't like a motivating factor for me as to why I really wanted to make the film. I think that I had an opportunity, I guess, and I had I've had privileges, no doubt, throughout my life. I had this opportunity to be a storyteller and a filmmaker who has had some experience and has some access to, I would say, some filmmaking capital, and it had the ability to use that privilege now to tell this story that, I felt was an injustice. Like I didn't understand why a high performing elementary school that's majority all Black would be under target to be closed and transformed transformed into this high school to benefit the neighborhood's wealthier residents. I mean, I did understand, right? It was because the color of the kid's skin.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I just wanted to dive in a little bit more to understand how do we get to this point, you know? And I think a lot of times when you look at the arguments from the other side, the folks that were in favor of the high school, some of them would try to present this as something that would benefit all of the community, right? But it's always Black and brown folks that have to sacrifice for that, right? We always are the ones that have to give up something. And I didn't feel like that was right. You know, that was not right. So, but I wanted to give everybody a fair shake, try to listen to their point of view, because I do think that's important, man. You know, it's hard that I think we have forgotten how to put ourselves in other people's shoes, regardless of whether we agree or disagree with folks. So, you know, put yourself in their point of view, trying to understand where they're coming from, and still disagree with what they're saying. But at the end of the day, I was motivated by that story because I do believe, like you mentioned, that school is more than just a place where you can learn, you know, your math and algebra and civil rights icons and stuff like that. It's a community, man, you know, and that's what it was at NTA. Like, this place became a community for those kids. And with it being under threat of being closed, they were going to lose that community. They were going to lose that goodwill. They were going to lose a family, basically. And I don't think people really look at school closings in that manner. The people who are having their school closed and are being dealt with that impact and that trauma understand that. But the average everyday person who probably doesn't have to deal with it, they don't see that. And so we're hoping that that's what the film will show for people. And they'll take another look at things when they hear about the next school that's closing. It might be near their neighborhood or in their city or what have you. They'll look at it differently and kind of really start to examine the who, what, when, why, and where.
Yeah, so that was something just in watching it, the community aspect shone through so brightly for me. So you said something interesting, and I just want to circle back to you talking about. So I went to public school and then went to college for a bit. You talked about how you grew up in private school. Like, were you doing that? Were you in private school like through elementary, through middle school? Like,
I did, man. You know, my parents did not like, at the time, Chicago public schools didn't have a great reputation. And this is back, you know, I'll date myself. It's okay. But, you know, this is back in the 80s, you know, 80s and the 90s. My parents didn't like the school options that were presented for me in my neighborhood at all. So they put me in private school. And I ended up staying there second grade through high school, through 12th.
Wow.
And I stayed at the same school. I almost left to go to a Catholic school in high school, but I decided to stay at this at this institution, Morgan Park Academy in Chicago. And, you know, it's, to me, I had a great time. It's a very small school. You know, again, like nothing like most people experience, right? Like there was probably 35 kids in my class, right? Through the entire time of second grade through 12th grade, right? So I know everybody in my class still, right? I could still keep them out on Facebook. That's how I got to know Liz Greer. You know, that's how I reconnected with her, the main film participant in our movie. We can talk about that later. But very small space, man, you know, and I just recognize the privilege of that and recognize that not everybody has that, but what can I do with that opportunity and that privilege down the road to make things better, possibly for other people, you know, other people that I care about. What can I do for my community? For me, it's like telling stories, right? That's what I'm going to be able to do. I feel like that's my gift. Everybody has a gift in this world. We just have to find out what it is. We have to have that be identified, maybe sometimes for us, or we find it on our own self-evaluation. But for me, it's storytelling. And so I wanted to use that gift for good.
Yeah, and with this film, you're more than on your way with doing that. So I'm happy you brought up Liz, because I wanted to bring her up because she's like the main, as you point out, the main person you interview here. Again, I know you're from Chicago. I want to talk the mayor, Emanuel. I want to say,
Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah. So I have been very blunt on my show about my politics. I think people should be more angry about some of the insanity that's occurred recently, and I'll that's the nicest way I'll put it for this interview. What I will say is the whole educated education aspect, as far as the fact that we're at a point where even saying the word slavery, oh, we don't need to call it that, or we don't need to be teaching, in the private sector as far as you go in school. I'm so happy you went up to private school for this reason. What were you learning as far as history? Were you learning like kind of what public school kids are learning? Were you learning Malcolm Martin and then actually forget that you're probably learning MLK Jr. and then stopping there? Like, I doubt they're teaching you Malcolm. Oh, okay, so they're pulling that. Oh, perfect. Good to know. There's no difference.
No, I learned Malcolm probably senior year. No, actually, maybe senior year into my first year of college.
Good Lord,
that's when I found him. I found the autobiography of Malcolm X. Right. Because I had been, in Southside Chicago, you drive by the temple all the time, and you drive by guys that are there selling the Final Call newspaper, the Fruit of Islam and stuff like that. And so I had always seen it, always been around it, but probably didn't do any introspection and understand, well, why are they there? What are they doing? What are they doing for the community and what have you? And so, it wasn't until college that I started to really dive into that and really learn that on my own. That was never, Malcolm X was not taught in my private school.
Okay.
No, sir.
Because that was something like I didn't learn until about like Harlem Renaissance until I think my senior year of high school. And I found that in the library on accident. It's like, oh, this would have been, good to, good to know,
exactly. But, like at NTA, those kids are learning about that second, third, fourth grade. They're learning about Fred Hampton. They're learning about the 63 boycott in Chicago, where parents and students walked out of class throughout the city to protest, the substandard conditions of public education in Chicago. They're learning about that stuff at such an early age, and that's beautiful, man. Like, they should know that stuff. They should know that earlier, because that just helps build, helps build their whole knowledge base and their viewpoint of the world, which is so important, so important.
That was one of the things about the documentary that I found fascinating was the curriculum, like the bits that you did touch on that. Because, they were learning about that stuff from so early on. And I was, to be honest, I was shocked. Genuinely shocked to see, oh, wow, they're learning about Malcolm in third grade. Because, I think most people's preference or reference is probably watching, the Spike Lee movie. And then maybe after that, researching. But seeing these kids learn, one of the parts in the documentary that I paused and I immediately clapped for you was when I saw the Alice Walker poster on the wall. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, this school's actually doing it right. Like, that's amazing. But to get back to Liz Greene, I love that you focused on her in the way that you did. I think you said that you knew her, like that she went to school with you, right? Or
so Liz and we went to the same school, elementary school at Morgan Park Academy.
That's
she
so
left.
Cool.
She left in like 8th grade, I believe. She went on to a different high school, but we had lost touch. But like I had mentioned earlier, we reconnected on Facebook, so I guess it's one good thing that Facebook did. It reconnects people. So it reconnected us. She was posting stories about NTA on her feed. And so that's where I first learned about the story, because she's fighting for her children and all that. And so Elizabeth, my memories of her as an elementary school kid, she was a lot like the student Ya in our movie. She's very shy, very quiet, introverted, kept to herself, but very intelligent too. And so this version that I saw of Liz now on social media, as she's fighting to save her school, like she had channeled her inner Shirley Chisholm or something, or Angela Davis. Like she was a fire, she was a force. And she was speaking with such heart and soul that I was really transfixed on this whole idea of watching an average everyday citizen finding that call to action, finding that little bit of activism in their heart and then following that journey, and seeing where that would take. So there was like those two themes were the things that I really wanted to explore in the film. And that's why I reached out to her and asked her what was going on. And do you think that we could do this? And long story short, she introduced me to the community, introduced me to Isaac Castle as the principal. And when he said that he wanted to participate, then, I knew that we had an opportunity to follow the story.
So I'm so happy you brought him up because that was going to be my next point here. I found Isaac's story really fascinating because, Chicago being a prominently, mixed races, obviously, but him being a white guy being the principal of this mostly black school, as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, that's a whole other set of, obstacles, and I think we can both speak to this. Being a person of color going through any education system, there is always kind of that hesitancy of like, okay, like I can, where's my line? Can I actually be myself without there being some sort of like negative pushback? Because there's a line that Liz dropped that I really appreciated where she talks about how she's okay being known as the angry black woman. And I remember just kind of pausing, shake my head because, when a black woman or, any person of color is passionate, they're seen as difficult. But, a white person, they can do that and they're passionate. I'm like, it's a subtle difference, but I'm like, that perception unfortunately does matter. And so when she brought that up, I was so happy you allowed her, you definitely put that in there. And I was like, oh, he did that for a reason, because that's a very unfortunate thing that we see every day. As far as Isaac's story, he talks about how later on in the documentary, how the board knew he was talking to y'all that he'd lose his job immediately. And that was something that I really love that you put in there, because it does hammer home the gravity of this situation in general. Speaking to him, as far as about his journey, I love the way you portrayed him. Was there anything that was left on the cutting room floor that you kind of went like, damn, I wish that we could have put that in? Or like, was there anything a little too hot that you went, oh, we need to like not put this in there? Like, how did you kind of make those decisions as far as like kind of what makes it in, what doesn't?
Well, you mentioned the whole idea of Isaac, with him being a white man and being a principal for a majority black and brown institution and doing well. Immediately you can be not targeted, but you can be labeled as a white savior, right? And so I wanted to make sure that Isaac is the farthest thing from that, right?
Yes.
That is not him. And you see that in the story, how that all unfolds. He knows that he's got still a lot of work to do when it comes to race relations. However, he's doing a lot better than some of his white peers, right? He does have a level of understanding that puts him above some of his peers. If some of them want to come on up and join him, then we would probably be doing a better job with race in general in America, right?
True.
As far as like stuff that was left on the floor, he really developed this strong relationship with Yaa there. And you see a little bit of that. Yes. We have some more scenes with those two that I would have loved to put in the film. The thing that I didn't have with Yaa is that, as you get to know her, you want to know more about her family. And she comes from a very private family. And so the parents just didn't want to be involved at all, right? They didn't want to be in the film. They're like, you can have Yaa, she can do, stuff in the school and all that, but we don't want to be involved. So I couldn't go to her home, which I thought would be something really important to kind of see that family home life and everything. And so when I knew that I couldn't do that, some of these scenes with her and Isaac just in the school felt a little limiting. As cool as they might have been in terms of building up their relationship, they just then open up a door to, well, what's Yaa like outside of this, and what is her thing away from school? It has helped build her to what she is now, and what are the things that her and Isaac are doing that are helping her grow and mature. And you see a little bit of that, and I think you're left at the end of the movie with a feeling of, well, I won't sit there and spoil it, but you're left a certain way with that relationship and feeling that Yah will go a certain way, I think. Instead of me trying to do that with 50 or 60 other kids, because that is what Isaac does. Like he does have great relationships with all the children in the school. He does have this thing called the Graphic Novel Club, which was an opportunity to invite kids come in after school and talk about graphic novels, right? And they would talk about Black Panther, and they would talk
Oh,
about all these
shoot,
other
that's cool.
superheroes. And
Okay.
he would tell lessons around, some of the mythology and try to kind of pin it back to some life lessons for the kids. And these were kids like Yah who might have had issues or problems kind of connecting with their peers, or feeling a little self-conscious or all that. But here, in this space, because they all love graphic novels, this was an opportunity for them to like you said, be themselves, without
Yeah.
judgment, and just really live and stuff. And so we did film a lot in that graphic novel club too, and that would have been fun to look at and see as well. Because like with the education movies, I did not want this to be like, I wanted to be able to show that NTA was a special place beyond saying that, oh, everybody gets good grades or they have like this quote
Yeah.
unquote GPA or whatever. Look at them going on to this way academically. Yes, they do that, but there are other ways that I wanted to explain and show how this place was a community, was a family, was leaving an imprint on its students, right? And so an opportunity like that, the Graphic Novel Club, it didn't necessarily make it into the movie. It was one of those last cuts. Some of the stuff with Yah was very important. You're just seeing that one-on-one relationship. And hopefully in seeing that relationship, that kind of translates into, this is the type of educator Isaac Castells is, the type of education that he wants his staff to give to all the kids, which is about being in service to the students. That's the main thing. We're in service to the students. What can we do for you? And some educators don't take that point of view,
At all.
and that's the thing that I think made NTA successful and unique.
Yeah, like the kids in particular, something that actually made me cry. I was watching a documentary, I had to I had to pause it, was when those the kids were playing that song at the beginning of the and Isaac
Yeah,
comes out, and it, because I think there is this.
because you've been
Sorry.
there, right? You've been that
Oh,
kid before.
absolutely. Because I mean, kids fall on their face sometimes because you're a kid and you're still learning. And the fact that Isaacs, took the brunt of that and went, this is on me. I didn't give them that long to practice, but he still told everyone to clap for him and that they would come back and be, better prepared the next time. It was something that I, to be honest, was not prepared for. And that's something that I kept saying that was kind of the theme while I was watching the documentary, and it's one reason I love the film so much. And I've been talking this up. I have my review already done. I'm real excited to post it, but it's one of these documentaries. One of the things I love so much about it is that every time I thought I kind of knew where it was going or how it was going to be framed, you would do something where I went, "Oh, well, damn, all right, that's different. I wasn't expecting that," and I felt that constantly throughout the documentary, and I love the documentary for that. Oh, what's his name? Earl Granberry, yeah. So I gotta talk.
This is a point where you got mad.
This is the point where I kind of went, okay, like this is. So I know we talked about staying, not being biased and showing all the sides. When you start getting to the parents talking about how they wouldn't let their kids go to NTA, like, oh, you're letting them associate with them. And that is a triggering word for me, going to year 36 of my life, where I hear them and I go, oh, okay. Like, that's like when I hear thug and I go, okay, I know what you mean. Like, you're not brave enough to actually say what you want to say. So you need to put this, qualifier to go ahead and try to lessen the blow. When you're interviewing these other people from a side that you're clearly like, oh God, I have to talk to you. Like, how do you keep that, like, not having a slant, like, because that's got to be hard as as a director, because you clearly know that these kids want their school to be better. They've been in a place where the school was not in a good place, and they've built it up through, as you said earlier, the community. So how do you kind of interview someone like an Earl Granberry and not have it go off the rails?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't want a lawsuit for one, right? So
Fair enough.
you have to be fair to these folks, regardless whether they sign a release, they could still sue you, you know. So I want to be fair to everybody. I have to be fair to that point, to their point of view, even if I disagree with it. And sometimes the sound and the interviews that they give, these folks kind of bury themselves with what they say. You know,
Yeah.
they put it out there. And a lot of times maybe they don't realize how hurtful or damaging their point of view can be. And they just feel like, you know, this is X, Y, and Z and not understand the dog whistle that they've just put out into the world or things of that nature. So for me, if they end up watching the film and they see some of those reactions or listen to some of the reactions from people or have conversations in their neighborhood about it, maybe it'll be a little bit of holding the mirror up to themselves, and there will be a moment of a little bit of self reflection there and recognize, well, what can I do better? What should I be doing better? How should I be looking at these situations? And it's not really these issues; it's really these relationships, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the way that's going to. If we're going to make any movements with race, it's about relationships. It's about recognizing that we all have biases and that we can't let those biases then stop us from getting to know one another based off of our characters, right? Not off of our color of our skin, what we're wearing today, how we're carrying ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. So I can hope that it'll give them a moment of self-reflection. That's all I can hope for.
That's fair because watching those bits, I was like, oh man, this is where I started doing this. I was like kind of like clawing up my mouse pad. I'm like, all right, like I knew we had to go here at some point. One thing that I will say, and I'm happy you use the term, you do use the term, or one of the parents uses the term dog whistle in here.
Yeah.
And I can't like that's one of those terms I don't hear very often brought up. Like I'm like it's a term that I'm aware exists, but I don't really hear people acknowledge the term. So you showing that meeting where all the parents were like why are you upset, and you and you have her drop the dog whistle term. I went, okay, this is really kind of pushing the whole concept of you can still be, and I think it's the lawyer who said it, and I'm blanking on his name.
John Jacoby.
Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Where he goes, I don't think this is like I don't like being called a racist. It's like, well, like there's a reason why why you're being called that. But I love how several people on the opposing side had the gall to go, well, it's not racist, it's classist. Like they're not tied
Yeah.
together in any way. like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
watching that back, because I mean, I'm sure you go back, you watch this once it's all put together, but going back and watching those moments, do you even as a director kind of go like, oh damn, do those moments kind of shock you, even though you were like involved with this film, or
Uh, do they shock me? Um, I think it's just unfortunate that they think that way still. That's what I would say, because this is the reason why there's such discord in this community. There's why there's such discord in America, period. I think when we look at race and racism, it's very easy for us to wrap our heads around the concept when when you're talking about white supremacy, or you're talking about the KKK and white hoods and that kind of stuff. Like we can recognize that, say that's morally bad and all that. But when we're talking about these subtle forms of racism, when we're looking at it from areas of communities that we think are going to be allies for us, people who will tell you that they have voted for Obama and things of that nature,
yeah,
but they'll then throw out some of those terms of like, well, I don't want to have my kids go to this school that's gang infested. That's a dog whistle, man.
yeah.
When and you mentioned it earlier, and actually this is one of the parents, the white parents at NTA, talking about she's sending her kids to NTA, and her peers are asking her, why are you sending your kid to go to school with those kids?
Yep.
We all know what that means right there. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? I've had that happen in my own life where people are talking about certain schools and they kind of downgrade a school, and then you think about, well, what's the majority of the population there? Oh, it's black. Oh, so it's a bad school just because all those
Mm-hmm.
black kids are going there. You know what I
Yep.
mean? I mean, that is unfortunate. That is the whole crux of the thing that we're still fighting to this day. And so I don't know if it doesn't surprise me per se. It just really disappoints me, that people that again you would hope to be allies still harbor some of those prejudices, but then don't even recognize it and feel like they become defensive. They become defensive and fragile. There's been books written about white fragility, and so I think you kind of see that in this instance with folks coming to the defense of their point of view immediately. I know it's not racist, it's a classist thing.
Yeah.
They're intertwined, man.
They really are. And
they're intertwined.
I've actually been reading the new Jim Crow that's on my bookshelf back there. And that's been a hard read.
I'm sure.
It's one of those books I'm like, I get this and I'm happy to have more knowledge on it, but just it's hard.
I read the 1619 Project. I love that book, man.
Oh, I haven't read that.
Read.
It's on my list.
Read it. Okay, read that after what you might be overloaded with the Jim Crow after that one. You might need to take a break for a minute and then come to it.
Okay, so fair enough. I will. I will put that on the list though, because
but you have to read it. It's a must read for sure.
Okay, the 1619 Project, you said?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I will. I will put that on the list.
Read it before they try to ban it in your area.
Okay, so let me ask you about that. I mean, because you doing a documentary about education. Okay, so I feel like you should be able to use whatever discourse you feel is necessary in your learning. So I mean, while I may not agree, I do this a lot, whatever. I hate Gone with the Wind. I think it's one of the shittiest books I've written. Like, I remember when I read it, I was just like, this book sucks. And I don't get why people like this. And I watched the movie and I'm like, oh yeah, I still think this sucks. But then I can watch something like Malcolm X or I Am Not Your Negro, and people are like, right. or even the new HBO Watchmen that came out a few years back. And I have people go like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And one thing I love about this documentary, kind of bring it back, is you cannot fix a problem if you don't acknowledge there is one. And one of the things that NTA brings up constantly is that this is not a school that's testing low. Like these kids are smart, they're bringing it in the classroom. And so then when the whole concept of turning it to a high school is brought up, I went, well, why fix something that's broken? Like when these kids are thriving, and I feel like education, unfortunately, still is kind of in that it's still kind of behind the eight ball. Where I love that you brought this up. You had Chance the Rapper on here, which I was from Chicago, of course. I was pleasantly surprised to see him, but when he talks about how he was allowed to go to certain schools, but then to go to that school, he wasn't allowed, and basically was told, like, don't you dare step on the premises. Like, when you're directing, when you're seeing stuff like that, like, are you just like, what the hell is happening? Like,
I thought that was just a poor decision by the district, and one that, again, was not with merit. I think that they really, as explained in the film, they probably saw Chance supporting NTA more from a public persona and feeling like him being able to be out in front and putting a good front up for NTA would do damage to the proposal idea.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to squash it, even though they claim, from what Isaac said, that he didn't follow the protocol to bring a celebrity to the campus or what have you. But we all kind of knew that the consequences of him not being there, of Chance not being able to go to NTA, would be a plus for the district and stuff. And so for me, that I learned a lot about the politics that happened, particularly in our city, but I know they happen in other cities with their school districts and what have you, where, we mentioned it earlier, Isaac was under threat of losing his job. Like, if he had if he had let anybody know that he was participating in this film, he would have lost his job, and who knows would have happened to NTA at that point of view. So I'm just saddened by some of that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this should not be the thing that we're worrying about. Like, when there's so many other issues in our city involving with education, like, you're going to be worried about an artist coming to a school for one day like that. You think that impact is going to be so great that it's going to cause a whirlwind of news or what have you, when no one in the city even knew what was going on with NTA. Like they really didn't, like there was one television story about it when it first broke, which is in the movie, and then when the injunction was announced, there were some news articles. But within that 2-year span, no one knows, no one cares, no one's talking about it outside of the people in the South Loop. So that's the thing that just kind of boggles my mind. We do live in such a large city with a lot of stuff going on, but people on the north side have no idea that NTA maybe even exists.
Wow. Okay.
And so when you start thinking about that, how disconnected they can be, and it's not only just NTA. When you had Laquan McDonald get murdered, there are people that didn't know about that, didn't know all the intricacies of that particular case. So that kind of stuff has to change, man. Like, we are all affected by it, by all of this.
Absolutely.
And not just because you don't live in this community or you don't come from that cultural background. Like, you are affected by it, and I think if we start to recognize that a little bit more, again, it's just like this greater understanding of what people are going through. That ability to walk in someone's shoes, to have that empathy for someone. That's the way you start to try to make some gains when we're talking about these racial relationships and stuff. That's what I would like to see happen. And, is it going to happen with our generation? Probably not. It's going to happen with the generation behind, our kids. I don't know. It might have to happen with the next generation, that's not born yet.
Yeah.
We'll see. We will see. But there's a lot that needs to be worked on for sure.
So a couple other things I wanted to bring up. I am enjoying this conversation so much. So I want to talk about Candace Moore, who's the NTA attorney. So first off, a badass, just oh my God, she was on it. And I want to leave this as vague as possible for people who obviously haven't seen it, but where the story ends up going with her. I love the way you interviewed her. I love the way that she was clearly composed, but also pissed off, like almost like to an eye-rolling extent. Like, I can't believe this is even, because there is that point, I think, in the documentary where you go, okay, NTA has done so much good, and you see, the parents marching in the streets, and you see the assemblies you're putting together of like the student council and all these things, and you're like, wow, this feels like a genuine, true community where these kids feel heard, they feel love, they feel inspired, which at the end of the day, if school's doing one of those three things, like, unfortunately that's seen as a win, but the school is doing all of that, and yet there's this threat of it being shut down. And I don't have her name here, but there's a point where they're marching in City Hall, and there's this lady who basically goes, oh, what was it? I believe like an officer had been shot or something like that.
Right.
And
yeah, it's like a press agent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, the way that was handled, I was like, like, it's like scenes like that, because obviously you want to show respect to what's occurring. Like how do you do that as a director? Because that was something I was like, okay, if the film's gonna trip at any point, in theory, it would be here. It doesn't, by the way. But it was something where I went, oh man, this is a really sensitive spot that you're in. So kind of talk to me about filming that and how you where that kind of ended up.
I wanted to play it out how it played out. That's how it played out. Like, the students go into march impromptu into City Hall. They want to go see the mayor. They want to, let him know, voice their opinion. They're stopped. The press agent comes up and tells the kids that there is a press conference going on for a person who had just lost their life from I think it was drunk driving accident, a police officer. And so they were asking for, can you please be quiet for a little bit, for a couple minutes. The way that she delivers this information, I read it as very derogatory, as, could you guys, it's because the one thing that she says is that we just need 5 minutes and then you guys can go back to doing what you want to do or something like that, And so that really was like, okay, another little dog whistle, right? Like, go on and you guys do your little thing, and then you'll be out of here anyway in a half hour. And the kids were like, no, we're going to stay here and we're going to be loud and we want to talk to the mayor, and so they went on and did their thing. And she comes back down and tries to plead with them, and they're like, no, it just doesn't happen. And I'll tell you, when I was editing this scene, this was the scene that I got a lot of feedback from, man. Where
not surprising,
and it broke down racially, right? Like there were a lot of white peers who had watched the scene and were very concerned about it looking poorly on the NTA students, for them to not give this family a moment of their time to their grieving and what have you, and let them talk and do their press conference. And then, my Black and brown peers caught on to the way that press agent spoke to them.
That's exactly what I caught when I was watching.
And felt that wasn't right, and felt like, we're always being asked to take a minute back. We're always being asked, hey, can you be quiet for a minute and then you can go do your thing. We're always being asked to sacrifice, always, all the time. And so that was a moment where those kids, and rightfully so, were like, no, we're not going to. We're not going to be quiet here. Because they, in essence, could have gone upstairs and did their press conference and it would have been okay. And that's what they ended up doing, right? They ended up going up to another place in the finest spot that ended up being quiet, and they were able to do their presser. So I knew that I had a kind of powder keg scene when I was starting to get that feedback. And I wanted to make sure that I was authentic to what happened. And I can feel where people would say, oh, the NTA protesters don't look good here. Maybe you should think about, trimming back something or what have you. And I went against that. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. If you feel like they look bad, okay, that's for you to say. That's your opinion. But there are other people that feel like they don't look bad here, and they understand they didn't like the way that they were being talked to by the press agent, which triggered a microaggression, which then, just brings in all the other stuff that we're talking about here. So they were in their right to kind of hold their ground there. Yeah, and so that's what I ended up doing. I kept it as authentic as it happened, and I knew that I had something interesting there that would spark some debate, and I was fine with people. It's up for you anyway. Like, I think any great movie should come down to, you might not agree with everything that the protagonists do in certain scenes or what have you, but, I'll let you decide what you think about it. I'm not going to manipulate the scene so that you definitely feel this way or that way.
Okay. And that's something, so that actually piggybacks with, what's his name? Arnie Duncan. Who's a figure in the documentary, and it was this kind of this 1-2 punch where I was just like, okay, I don't like damn it all, because when I was reading, when you're having them list out kind of the requests that they're wanting for this merger, how they wanted a separate main office, they wanted separate entry times. I'm sitting there watching this going, okay, are you just going to say segregation? Like, are you just going to come out and say it instead of, using the smoke screen to go, no, like separate but equal, if you will. And I'm sitting there watching it going, okay, this is driving me nuts. I can't imagine if I'm filming this and just rolling my eyes. As the film goes on, something that I just found so incredibly interesting is that as you start to kind of interact with the kids more, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you dedicated the film or the documentary to Olivia, who was Taylor's grandmother. And I really like Taylor's journey. I don't want to spoil it here, but she's a student who goes to NTA, and her whole background, talking about feeling like she's a puzzle and that there was a piece missing. And that's all I'll say. That was something I went, wow, I did not expect something that heavy from a student. One thing that I think that you do an incredible job of is showing that these kids are obviously kids, they're still growing up. I think they're way more aware than I'll call them the opposition because, technically, I feel like they're way more aware than the opposition is actually aware of. Because there's that scene when they get thrown out of that meeting, and I went, "Oh wow, you really just didn't want them to have a voice." So I really just want to ask you about Taylor because the bits we get with her, I think, are some of the most powerful things in the whole documentary, and I just found myself really captivated by her and just the way that she clearly knew what she was talking about, but also understood the gravity of the situation that she was involved in. So can you kind of talk to me a little bit about her and kind of her journey a little bit?
Yeah, Taylor, she's in eighth grade. She won the eighth grade team there that she was at all the protests. She was at all the meetings, and she always spoke at these meetings and really had a clear voice and passion for saving NTA. She had went there since, I believe, second grade. So this was her school. This was more than a school for her. This was her family. This was her community that she had really grown up in. And Taylor easily, as an eighth grader graduating, could have fought the good fight a little bit and then went on and just thought about, okay, well, what high school am I going to go to now? And what college am I going to go to, et cetera, et cetera. But no, and she continued to fight because she knew that while whatever happened wouldn't necessarily affect her, it would affect the kids below her, in seventh grade, sixth grade, fifth grade, et cetera. And she was fighting for them. And so when you realize that that's what she's doing, and she even says that, you recognize that you are in awe of a special person there that kind of knows where they're going, in life, or kind of is figuring out their calling. And this is just one of the little stepping stones that's going to take her to her goal. She is now in college, actually. She's going to Georgia State.
Oh, good for her.
And she wants to be a civil rights attorney,
let's go. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this experience definitely helped plant that seed,
Yeah.
And so that's just what's so amazing. And yeah, she had a great family, and obviously, I did dedicate the movie to her grandmother Olive, who passed away during the pandemic, actually, like in 2020. Damn. Yeah.
So that actually leads to my my last couple questions here. So is there any plans to potentially follow up with the kids in documentary like down the line, or?
I don't know. I haven't made any of those kind of plans for them. I tell you, we could do another documentary about what's going on in the neighborhood, because they're still fighting
really
over this idea of the high school, and the proposal has now shifted to build the high school on the land formerly owned by the Ickey homes, which is in the movie, And so when the Ickey homes were demolished, the city had promised the former residents that they would build some sort of mixed use housing for them, so that if any of them did want to return, they could come back to the neighborhood and live in this new development. Well, there's this big argument over who owns the land now. And it's my understanding that the housing authority has either leased or sold the land to the school district, or they want to, so that then the school district can now build this $100 million high school, which everybody is in opposition of, because they're like, we don't need this high school in this area. If you would just fund the high schools that are in the neighborhood,
yes,
then we would maybe alleviate this problem, So that's the fight that's going on literally now. So if we wanted to do any sort of sequel, it would be that.
Okay. So, okay, I've got a few more questions. I promise I'll let you get out of here. Where the documentary ends up, and again, I don't want to spoil where it ends up. One of my favorite movies is Mr. Holland's Opus with Richard Dreyfuss, and one of my favorite quotes from that film is that teachers are the last great heroes of our culture. And I think you did an incredible job of highlighting the multitude of people who inhabit that school, keep it going, all that jazz. After people watch this documentary and they've had some time to digest it, because I will be the first to admit I watched this to start my morning yesterday, and I really kind of sat the movie for a couple hours and just kind of had to let it just again for just over 80 minutes. There's a ton of information, there's a lot to break down. What do you want people to take away? Like, if there's one thing people need to take away from this documentary, what do you want people to take away?
Don't underestimate our Black and brown children. That's probably the biggest thing. There is, as Elizabeth says in the movie, there's this underlying thought that an all Black classroom can't be smart, and we know that that's incorrect. We know that we can be smart. We can be the best and the brightest of them all. When I think of that, when I think about even with my upbringing, not being in public schools, as we mentioned, but still being a young Black child in Chicago, I'm sure that I had to fight those stereotypes, whether I knew it or not, of what would I be in this world. And when you look at those children from NTA and you ask yourself, well, how come some of those families from the South Loop won't send their kids to that school? And their reasoning, they can make any other reason that they want to, but the main reason is that they're afraid. They're afraid of what a connection might be with the current student population. I want to shatter those stereotypes. I want to shatter that. I want people to stop looking at the invisible shirt that we all wear of the stereotypes that say, oh, I'm Black, and because I wear this or I do that, that's who I am. And it's not, it's not. So I want to shatter the stereotypes there and have people recognize that we're smart, we're intelligent, we want the same things that you want. We want the families want the same things that you want. A great education for our kids that will hopefully ensure a great future for them. We all want the same thing. And we need to strive toward it. We need to strive to that equitable piece. How do we do that? Let's look at those biases that we have and start to realize that that's the thing, that's the crutch. We got to get rid of it.
I could not agree more. And I think that is a perfect place to end this. Kevin Shaw, I cannot thank you nearly enough, sir, for taking the time. This was, and I truly mean this, enjoyable from start to finish. I gave the documentary our highest rating, which is a fan fantastic. I think this documentary is horribly important, especially with where education is right now, and as we're the conversations going on what to be taught and what to not be taught and what's omitted and all that jazz. I'm so happy that this documentary is as timely as it is, and I can't wait for everyone to see it. Could you please tell people where they can see this, where they can kind of reach out to you, all that jazz?
Yeah. First thing I would say is look up our website, lightshinefilm.com. You can see a screening near you. We're playing in a limited theatrical release right now of Chicago, New York, LA, coming to North Carolina, Detroit later in the year, and some other cities. So that will be updated as we go on. We'll be on national television December 12th. On PBS, their award-winning series POV. So December 12th will be our national television debut. That's where probably the majority of our audience will get a chance to check out the film there. We'll be on the PBS video app for a month after that. That's free, so you can check us out there. You can hit up our socials on Instagram, Lightshine Film, Lightshine Doc on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Kevin Shaw 23. And we really appreciate the support, Hunter. This has been a great conversation. Thank you very much for everything. And I'm glad the film really resonated with you, as I believe it resonates with a lot of people and will continue to.
Yeah, it really did. And again, I cannot thank you enough for taking this leap and being, and showing love to your city and being able to put something on my radar that I wasn't aware was even happening. So thank you so much. To end on a Bit of a comedic note, I will ask you this since you're a sports fan. Best Chicago sports athlete is?
Oh, I mean, come on, man. You know, number 23.
All right, all right, all right. If it's all right, fine. You know, I should have qualified that. If it's not, all right. If it's not Jordan, who is it?
Ooh, okay, yeah. So that's a better one. Ooh,
There you
that's
go.
if it's not Jordan, and I won't say basketball. Okay, I'll say it's obviously Walter Payton. Walter
Okay,
Payton after that.
that's a great answer. You know, I'm gonna throw out one. I'm gonna throw out one more to you. Best Chicago rapper is?
Chance.
Is Chance? Okay. All
I
right.
might be a little homer there, but yeah, I gotta say that.
I think Lupe and Common are in the conversation, but I love it. But
Common's great too, man. Oh
okay,
yeah, I got yeah. He's up there. Do I have to pick? I say 1A and 1B, right? Those
fair
two right
enough.
there. Chance and Common. There you go.
There you go. Kevin, thank you so much for the time again, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you, Hunter. Take
All
care.
right, you as well, sir.